Hello, my name is Ellen Stevens, and I'd like to welcome you to this presentation, Coffee Consumption, Habit, or Genetic. The research method chosen for this study was the thematic analysis method, which is a qualitative method. I chose 3 themes to focus on: social habit, family habit, and the genetic component. 3 sets of hypotheses were developed, 1 set for each theme. Each theme had a null hypothesis and an alternative hypothesis. For social habits, the null hypothesis states there is no relation between social habit and coffee consumption, where the alternative states there is a relation between social habit and coffee consumption. For social habits, most of the research centered around coffee shop houses or cafes. This is an example of the coffee shop growth in the UK between 2009 and 2014. In the study called Why Do You Drink Caffeine?, caffeinated beverage drinkers were separated into different categories. The category coffee only group rated highest in social motives, with coffee and tea group at a close second. The hypotheses related to social habits were rejected. The null hypothesis, there is no relation between social habit and coffee consumption, was deemed false. There is some evidence of social motives that are related to coffee consumption. Therefore, H1 null was rejected for the purpose of this study. The alternative hypothesis, there is a relation between social habit and coffee consumption, was deemed inconclusive. Although some evidence points to social motives present in relation to coffee consumption, there is much evidence that the social settings are based on availability and marketability of coffee shop locations. Therefore, H1 alternative was also rejected. As you can see, the hypotheses for the theme family habits are similar to social habits. The null hypothesis is there is no relation between family habit and coffee consumption. With an alternative hypothesis, there is a relation between family habit and coffee consumption. Little to no data was available relating family habits with coffee consumption. So for the purpose of this project, historical research was obtained. Interestingly, the British choice of tea over coffee was not related to traditions or for the British love of tea, but rather because coffee, the commodity, was in a very volatile market where prices would be high and availability would be low. Therefore, the British choice of tea basically was because it was more available and more affordable to them. A research project called Back to the Coffee Shop, a study of the perceptions of Turkish coffee consumption in FYROM with regards to home and third space, took a look at traditional coffee consumption and compared it with coffee shops. Traditionally, based on economic needs, a mixture of rye, chickpeas, and coffee beans was made and powdered to brew their coffee. Currently, the coffee shops use only the coffee beans. Due to the lack of evidence, both hypotheses for the theme family habits have been rejected. The null hypothesis, there is no relation between family habit and coffee consumption, could be related to the information found in the Finnish twin study results. As stated, no evidence of environmental impact was found on coffee consumption. However, it doesn't necessarily mean there are no relationships between family habit and coffee consumption. The evidence is inconclusive. Therefore, the hypothesis has been rejected. The alternative hypothesis, there is a relation between family habit and coffee consumption, may be correlated with information found on Turkish traditions. The Turkish coffee mixture recipes have been handed down through generations. However, the handing down of recipes does not necessarily mean that there is a correlation between family habit and actual coffee consumption. Therefore, there is not enough evidence, and the alternative hypothesis has also been rejected. Moving on to the theme genetic component, the null hypothesis is there is no relation between genetics and coffee consumption. With an alternative hypothesis, there is a relation between genetics and coffee consumption. In the Finnish twin study, a genetic component was found related to coffee consumption. This component plays a part in caffeine addiction. In the Japanese genetic study, there was a determined link between 12q24.12-13 locus that is strongly associated with the habitual coffee consumption, and the genetic effect is stronger in males than in females. A meta-analysis study was significant in its research because relationships were determined using databases outlining candidate genes for loci from the current study with candidate genes related to caffeine pharmacology. For the theme genetic component, the alternative hypothesis was accepted. The null hypothesis, there is no relation between genetics and coffee consumption, was deemed to be false and therefore rejected. However, the alternative hypothesis, there is a relation between genetics and coffee consumption, was deemed to be true. Hypothesis is accepted. For future study, it is recommended that more conclusive data regarding social and family influence on coffee consumption be collected. It is recommended that a questionnaire be done in a sampling of the population over the age of 18 with questions regarding to age, race, gender, amount of coffee consumed, relationship to other coffee drinkers, general setting of use, and general motives. This will be helpful in determining attitudes and behaviors in relationship to other influences of coffee consumption. Thank you for your interest in this presentation, Coffee Consumption, Habit or Genetic.